I knew he was lying the night his phone lit up, and my name wasn't the one glowing on the screen," Sarah said, her voice trembling in the shadows of her memory. She remembered how Michael swore transparency, how he said every secret would be spoken before it rotted between them. Yet in that moment, with the glow of another name, she realized truth was already a ghost in their bed. Emily laughed from across the kitchen that night, her presence too natural, too comfortable, while Sarah stood frozen, her chest a storm of disbelief. Michael said, "It's just work, don't twist it." But Sarah heard the fracture beneath his calm tone, the kind that didn't heal. That was the first time the walls of their open promise cracked. And in the silence after, Sarah whispered to herself that love had already shifted into shadows. She could no longer command. Sarah thought rules would save them. She remembered the night she and Michael drew lines across a piece of paper, promising honesty. Michael said, "Boundaries protect us, not trap us." She believed him then, her heart clinging to the idea that trust could be written into existence. But now, staring into the memory, she saw how those boundaries only became walls to climb over. Emily's laughter replayed in her ears, each echo sharp as glass. Sarah whispered to herself, "I agreed to openness, not blindness." She realized rules never protected her from betrayal. They only gave Michael something to break quietly. Her chest ached with the weight of unspoken dread. Michael once told her love could expand without tearing. He said, "We'll never choose one over the other, Sarah." She believed him, her hands clasped in his, their eyes locked with hope. But now that sentence twisted like a blade. Sarah replayed the warmth in his tone, the softness in his promise, and she hated how much she wanted to believe him still. Love did not expand, it bled. And she was left to clean the wound alone. The ghost of Emily's smile haunted her, and Michael's words rang hollow, echoing like broken glass inside her chest. Sarah knew jealousy wasn't supposed to exist in polyamory, yet it wrapped around her throat like smoke. Emily's name became a shadow, creeping into every corner of Sarah's mind. Michael said, "Don't let fear poison what we've built." His voice was calm, but Sarah felt dismissed. She wanted him to see her hurt, to hold it instead of silencing it. Instead, silence became her cage. She smiled in front of Emily, pretending strength while her insides twisted. In the quiet of night, she asked herself if love meant bleeding quietly so he could feast on freedom. The first crack in Sarah's voice came when she whispered, "I don't recognize us anymore." Michael looked at her with eyes half shut, exhausted from pretending nothing was wrong. He said, "You're overthinking again." That dismissal broke her more than the secret texts ever could. Emily's presence was growing, not fading, and Sarah knew it. She felt like a ghost haunting her own love story, watching from the edges while others lived inside it. Each night, the silence stretched wider, and Sarah told herself love shouldn't feel like a rasher. Yet, here she was, fading, while Michael's promises turned into smoke. Sarah noticed how Michael's voice softened whenever Emily spoke, even in casual conversations. Once, while pouring coffee, Emily joked, and his laugh carried warmth Sarah hadn't heard in weeks. Sarah said, "You never laugh like that with me anymore." Michael looked at her, feigning surprise, and answered, "You're imagining things." But her chest tightened, because she wasn't. That small shift, the way his eyes lingered on Emily's smile, the subtle tilt of his body toward her, spoke louder than denial. Sarah whispered into her own silence, "Love is leaving in glances, not in words." She hated how powerless it felt to watch love slip, not like an explosion, but like a slow leak no one admits exists. The rules they wrote had said no secrets, yet Sarah felt surrounded by them. Michael came home late, the smell of wine clinging to him, and she asked softly, "Was Emily there?" He froze, just long enough to confirm what words could deny. He finally muttered, "It was just a drink, nothing more." But Sarah knew nothing more meant everything more. That night, while lying in bed, she watched the ceiling fan spin, each turn carving a question into her chest. She whispered, "Am I losing him, or did I already lose him?" The silence beside her offered no answer, only the ghost of his laughter echoing somewhere else. Sarah remembered Emily asking once, "Are you okay with me being around so much?" Her voice had carried sincerity, but Sarah couldn't tell if it was innocence or provocation. She forced a smile and answered, "Of course, I'm fine." Inside, her ribs ached from the lie. Michael had promised balance, yet Emily's presence grew heavier every day. Sarah thought, "Am I the guest in my own life now?" That evening, she replayed Emily's question in her head like a taunt disguised as kindness. The air between them thickened, the space shrinking, until Sarah realized there was no safe corner left where Emily's shadow didn't follow. Michael insisted that love multiplied, not divided. He said, "There's enough of me for both of you." Sarah wanted to believe, but each day her portion felt smaller. Emily's texts pinged through the night, and Sarah lay awake counting every chime. She whispered to herself, "If love multiplies, why do I feel halved?" Michael smiled like nothing was wrong, his charm shielding him from guilt. Sarah noticed how his phone never left his side, how his fingers twitched toward it, even mid-conversation. The house that once felt like theirs now felt like a waiting room where she sat invisible, while he poured pieces of himself elsewhere. The first time Sarah broke down, it wasn't loud. It was in the bathroom with the door locked, her back against the tiles, her breath shaking. She whispered, "I can't do this anymore," though she still did. Michael knocked once, asked, "Are you okay?" And when she answered, "I'm fine," he walked away without waiting. That silence stung deeper than any argument could. Sarah realized her suffering wasn't invisible, it was ignored. And in that moment, she felt the cruelest truth. She wasn't losing him slowly. He was already gone. Only his body remained. The love she clung to was already ashes slipping through her fists. Sarah sat at the dinner table, staring at the empty chair where Michael should have been. His text had said, "Running late, don't wait." She already knew why. The untouched food before her went cold, but her anger burned hotter. She whispered, "He's with her again." The house felt larger in his absence, every room echoing with silence. When Michael finally returned, his smile was too polished, his explanations too smooth. Sarah asked, "Did Emily enjoy her drink?" His eyes flickered, just once before he lied. That flicker became her truth, a dagger sharper than words. She realized their home had turned into a stage, and both of them were rehearsing lines neither believed anymore. The first fight came sharp, knives hidden in words. Michael said, "You're suffocating me with suspicion." Sarah snapped back, "You suffocate me with lies." The air between them turned poisonous. Emily's name wasn't spoken, but it hung in the room like smoke, suffocating every breath. Sarah hated how she trembled while Michael looked composed. She realized the imbalance was not just love, but power. He dictated the narrative, she bore the doubt. That night, she screamed into her pillow, muffling her pain because even her voice had no room in their shared life anymore. She thought, how long can I survive as a ghost while he thrives in shadows? Emily's presence grew so constant it felt orchestrated. Sarah remembered a gathering where Emily touched Michael's arm mid-laughter, and he didn't flinch away. Instead, he leaned closer. Sarah forced a laugh at a stranger's joke, though her vision blurred with rage. She said silently, "I see you choosing her even in small gestures." Later, Michael claimed, "It's harmless, don't invent drama." But every glance, every smile, every subtle brush of skin was a betrayal that eroded Sarah's sanity. She wondered if she was the only one who noticed the quiet war, unfolding beneath laughter and wine glasses. It was a war she was losing without a weapon. Sarah began counting lies like tally marks on her heart. Working late, traffic was heavy, phone died. Each excuse felt rehearsed, a script perfected. She stared at him one night and asked, "Do you even hear yourself?" Michael sighed, his tone exhausted. "You were obsessed with paranoia." The word cut deeper than any admission could. She wasn't paranoid. She was abandoned in plain sight. Emily's perfume lingered faintly on his jacket, proof sweeter than any confession. Sarah pressed her face into his chest, pretending not to notice, because pretending hurt less than the truth. Yet inside, she screamed, "I am being erased, piece by piece." Sarah found herself scrolling through old photos, desperate for proof that love once lived here. Smiles captured in sunlight mocked her now, because those faces no longer existed. She whispered to herself, "Where did we go?" Michael walked past, glancing at the screen and muttered, "Stop living in the past." His words crushed her, because the past was all she had left. The present was tainted, the future stolen. Emily had taken root in spaces Sarah once called home, and Michael let her. Sarah realized memory had become her only safe place, but even that was fading, poisoned by betrayal's shadow. Sarah's world cracked the night she opened Michael's phone and saw Emily's message. "I wish I could wake up next to you every morning." Her hands shook, her throat dry, her heart pounding like a drum of betrayal. She whispered, "So it wasn't just drinks." When Michael walked in, she held the phone up, her eyes burning. He froze, mask slipping for the first time. "It's not what it looks like," he stammered, but Sarah laughed bitterly. "It's exactly what it looks like." The denial collapsed, truth bleeding through silence. In that moment, Sarah realized she wasn't battling for space anymore. She was already replaced, living inside a lie dressed as love. Michael tried to explain, words tumbling like broken glass. "It's complicated," he said, his hands raised as if to calm her storm. Sarah snapped, "No, it's betrayal." Emily's name spilled into the argument for the first time, no longer a shadow but a weapon. Sarah's voice cracked, "You swore we had rules." Michael's face hardened, "Rules don't cage love." That sentence tore her in half because it confirmed what she already knew. The rules had been broken long before tonight. Her trust, once fragile, shattered completely in a single heartbeat. And in the shards, she saw herself bleeding, yet unable to stop. The next day, Sarah confronted Emily, her voice brittle but sharp. She asked, "Did you know he promised me forever?" Emily's eyes didn't flinch. She replied, "He promised me the same." That confession was worse than any lie. Sarah's chest caved, realizing the betrayal wasn't hidden. It was shared openly between them. Emily didn't look like the villain Sarah had painted. She looked like another victim of Michael's hunger for more. But pity couldn't erase the damage. Sarah left trembling, whispering, "He broke both of us, but only one of us gets to stay." That night, Sarah screamed until her throat burned, the words ripping through her chest. "You made me believe I wasn't enough." Michael snapped back, "This isn't about enough. It's about love being bigger than rules." His defiance pierced deeper than apology ever could. She realized then that he wasn't sorry. He was justified in his own mind. The betrayal wasn't a mistake, it was a choice. And choices don't get undone with excuses. Sarah felt herself breaking not just from his infidelity, but from the realization that she had built her world on quicksand. The final twist cut sharper than betrayal itself. Sarah overheard Michael on the phone, his voice soft and tender, saying, "I love you, Emily." Not just desire, not just a fling, love. Those words shattered the last thread holding Sarah together. She whispered into the silence, "It was never about sharing. It was about losing." The rules, the promises, the endless reassurances, everything crumbled into dust with that confession. She wasn't fighting for balance anymore. She was fighting a war already lost. And in that moment, Sarah finally understood the truth. She was no longer his choice, only his shadow. The house erupted with words too sharp to take back. Sarah shouted, "You don't get to destroy me and call it love." Michael's face reddened, his voice booming, "You agreed to this." That sentence sliced through her like fire. She cried, "I agreed to honesty, not deceit." The walls shook with their rage, years of buried resentment bursting into daylight. For the first time, Sarah's fear cracked into fury, her voice louder than his. Yet, beneath the screaming, her chest caved with despair. Because even in her defiance, she knew truth. Love had already slipped beyond repair, leaving only wreckage behind. Michael hurled words like stones. "You'll never understand what freedom means," he spat. Sarah's hands trembled as she shouted back, "Then why did you promise me chains of loyalty?" His silence afterwards screamed louder than his rage. She realized his freedom meant her destruction, his truth meant her erasure. Tears blurred her vision, yet she didn't stop. "You wanted everything," she cried, "and you left me with nothing." The rawness in her voice startled even Michael, who lowered his gaze briefly. In that fleeting silence, Sarah saw him not as a partner, but as a stranger who had broken her soul without flinching. In desperation, Sarah collapsed into a whisper. "Tell me you don't love her." Michael's jaw clenched, eyes darting away. His silence became her answer. She gasped, "Say it!" Finally, his voice cracked. "I can't." That confession shattered her more than anger ever could. Her knees buckled, the air ripped from her lungs as if the room itself had betrayed her. She realized love hadn't just died. It had transferred, stolen while she watched. Sarah felt like a witness at her own funeral, watching the man she once trusted bury everything they built with 3 simple words, "I can't." Sarah screamed until her voice broke, fists pounding against her own chest. "You chose her over me," she cried, voice raw with devastation. Michael shouted back, "It wasn't supposed to be a choice." That sentence burned in her ears, because it always was a choice, and he had already made it. She collapsed against the wall, sobbing, her body trembling under the weight of truth. Michael stood there, fists unclenching, guilt painted on his face, but no words of redemption left. The silence between them grew unbearable, a void deeper than any argument could fill. It was the sound of love dying. The climax came not with a scream, but with a whisper. Sarah's voice, barely audible, carried the weight of collapse. "I was never enough for you, was I?" Michael stood frozen, his lips parting, but no sound escaped. The silence told her everything she feared. Tears rolled down her face as she whispered again, "You broke me and called it love." In that moment, Sarah felt herself split. The woman who believed in forever died, and a hollow survivor remained. The room felt suffocating, air thick with grief. It wasn't just the end of a fight, it was the end of them. The storm had passed, but the silence afterward felt heavier than the shouting. Sarah sat at the kitchen table, staring at an untouched cup of coffee, the steam long gone. Michael moved quietly through the house, his presence ghost-like. She whispered, "We're strangers now. No more accusations, no more defense, just the hollow space where love once lived." The ache in Sarah's chest wasn't rage anymore. It was grief settling like dust. Michael glanced at her, his lips parting as if to speak, then closing again. The absence of words told her what she already knew. Their story was no longer being written together. Sarah began to pack small pieces of herself away. Her books, her photographs, her fragments of belonging. Each object felt like a scar torn from the life they built. She whispered, "I never thought forever would fit inside a box." Michael stood at the doorway, his face pale with exhaustion, but he didn't stop her. He said quietly, "If this is what you need." That sentence felt both cruel and merciful. She realized he wasn't fighting for her anymore, and maybe he never truly had. Love had already left, and now she was simply catching up to its absence. The rules that once gave Sarah hope now sat crumpled on the table, meaningless. She stared at the paper, the ink smudged from her tears. She whispered, "You promised me safety." Michael stood nearby, voice soft but hollow. "We tried." The words echoed like a failed prayer. She realized rules could not cage desire, and promises could not bind loyalty. Her heart throbbed with the weight of wasted faith. In the silence, she placed the paper into the trash, watching it sink beneath scraps, symbolic of everything they'd lost. What once felt sacred now ended like garbage discarded without ceremony. Sarah sat outside on the porch, night air cool against her skin, searching the stars for answers. She whispered, "I gave everything, and it still wasn't enough." Michael joined her quietly, sitting beside her but miles away in spirit. His silence pressed heavier than words. For a moment, she remembered the laughter they once shared under the same sky, but the memory felt like someone else's life. She realized endings don't arrive with clarity. They seep slowly until all that's left is emptiness. Her tears fell quietly, absorbed by the dark wood beneath her feet. The house, once alive with love, now breathed only silence. Sarah stood in the hallway, suitcase at her side, her hand trembling on the doorknob. Michael stood behind her, his voice low. "I never meant to lose you." She didn't turn, because turning back meant reliving every wound. She whispered, "You already did." With that, she opened the door, the cold air rushing in like a new beginning wrapped in sorrow. She stepped into the night, carrying the weight of scars, but also the faintest spark of freedom. The love she lost could not be revived, but neither could she remain in its ruins. The night Sarah left, the city was still alive, neon signs flickering against the rain-slicked streets, but inside her chest everything was dead. She pulled her suitcase behind her, wheels rattling like echoes of every broken promise. Her voice trembled as she whispered, "This is the end I never prepared for." She remembered the girl she used to be, the one who believed love could be bent without breaking, and she hated how naive that girl now seemed. Michael stood in the doorway, face pale under the dim porch light, but he didn't call her back. That silence was his confession louder than words. For a moment, Sarah wished he would fight for her, beg her to stay, tell her that Emily was nothing but a mistake. But the truth sat between them like a wall. He had chosen, and his choice had torn them both apart. As she stepped into the cold night, Sarah realized endings don't always come with closure. Sometimes they come with silence that haunts louder than screams. She said softly, "Goodbye," but even that word felt too fragile for the grave she was leaving behind. Sarah found herself walking alone through the city, the crowd buzzing around her, yet she felt invisible. Every step echoed with the weight of what she had lost. She whispered, "I gave everything, and still I wasn't enough." The thought stung sharper than any betrayal. She paused near a cafe window, catching her reflection in the glass. Tired eyes, trembling lips, a stranger wearing her face. Inside the cafe, couples leaned close, laughter spilling like promises Sarah once believed in. She remembered the way Michael used to hold her hand across tables, whispering plans for forever. Now forever was a ghost she couldn't touch. For the first time, she admitted aloud, "I wasn't just betrayed, I was erased." Her voice cracked, but no one around her noticed. The city kept moving, indifferent to her unraveling. In that indifference, Sarah saw truth. Love may have broken her, but survival was hers alone. The world wouldn't wait for her grief. It would demand she carry it and keep walking. And so, with trembling breath, she did. The days that followed were painted in gray. Sarah sat in a small rented apartment, boxes stacked like reminders of displacement. She stared at a photo frame she couldn't throw away. Her and Michael on the beach, smiles wide, eyes lit with false eternity. She whispered, "We look like strangers even here." She pressed the glass until her fingertips hurt, trying to feel something beyond the image. Emily's name no longer stung like a dagger. It lingered instead like a scar that refused to fade. Sarah realized she wasn't mourning just Michael. She was mourning the version of herself who believed in him. That loss felt heavier than losing him. She finally placed the photo face down on the table, refusing to let ghosts dictate her present. She said to the empty room, "I survived you, Michael, but I don't know if I'll ever forgive myself for staying as long as I did." The echo of her own voice was the only comfort she had, and for now, it was enough. One evening, Sarah walked along the riverbank, cold wind pressing against her coat. The city lights shimmered across the water like broken promises. She whispered, "I wonder if he ever misses me." The thought clawed at her chest, but then she shook her head. What was there to miss? He hadn't lost her accidentally. He let her go. She sat on a bench, staring at the ripples, remembering how Michael once said, "No one can replace you." Now those words felt like cruel poetry, designed to blind her while he replaced her piece by piece. She pressed her fists against her knees, her body trembling not from cold but from rage, disguised as grief. Slowly, her breath steadied. She realized missing him was poison, and survival meant refusing to drink it. For the first time, she let herself imagine a future where his name wasn't carved into her. She whispered, "You don't get to define me anymore." The river swallowed her words, carrying them away like ash. The final blow wasn't delivered by Michael or Emily. It came from Sarah herself. Standing in front of the mirror, she whispered, "I survived, but I will never be the same." Her reflection stared back, eyes hollow yet defiant. She touched her chest as if to feel the emptiness where love used to live. For months she had begged, screamed, and broken herself trying to hold on to a man who had already chosen another. Now, standing alone, she realized the cruelest betrayal wasn't that he loved Emily. It was that she had allowed herself to shrink for so long, believing her pain was a price worth paying. Tears slid down, but she didn't wipe them away. Instead, she whispered one last confession. "You didn't just break my heart, Michael. You taught me I'll never hand it away so carelessly again." That line struck her like thunder, final and unflinching. It wasn't healing, not yet, but it was survival. And survival, she realized, was its own kind of power.